First of all, with regards to your questions, there is a chat box and you can leave your questions there. And at the end, we'll have time to tackle them one by one with Isabella. Secondly, muting yourself is important, but that you all got the message. Thank you for that. I will give the floor to Piet Colruyt, the founder of our Impact House. He will then pass the words to Clémentine Van Hamme, the Fellowship Program Manager at Ashoka, who will at her turn give the word to our keynote of the day, Isabella. Thank you for joining, and we hope you will enjoy this session.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Piet Colruyt, and I am the founder of the Impact House. Welcome on this first webinar of the Celebration Week. Every day of this week, the Impact House organizes an interesting reflection moment at 4 p.m. sharp. That was the goal. We co-organize it with one of the tenants in the Impact House. Today, you will listen to Isabella Lenarduzzi, an Ashoka Fellow with a mission. After my 3 minutes of introduction, Clémentine will explain more about Ashoka, and afterwards, Isabella will dive deeper during the next 30 minutes on her topic, followed by a Q&A. Some reflections. 12 years ago, I read an interview with Christian de Duve. It was a Belgian evolutionary biologist, physician, and Nobel Prize winner. It was an interview just after the financial crisis. From an evolutionary point of view, there are all two ways of taking care of your children. He said, the masculine way of taking care of your family was competition. Men were hunters and the other tribes were competitors looking for the same wild animals in the forest. The hunters with the best techniques were the most successful, and the women stayed in their village and had to collaborate. While some women went for fruit or water, others looked for their babies. The feminine way of taking care is collaboration, and human history has always been about the right balance between competition and collaboration. Some people today still believe competition is the only way to create prosperity. You have to eat if you don't want to be eaten. This is wrong. Life is not a zero-sum game. People love to share. People want to collaborate. Competition brought us fantastic technological innovations, economic growth and prosperity, but we destroyed the planet, we polluted the air, we changed the climate because externalities were not taken into account. The GDP grew in most countries, but the happiness index didn't follow. We went for materialism and consumerism, but forgot well-being and the boundaries of the planet. We were too much hunters, competitors, and forgot the feminine way of taking care. Christian de Duve concluded, if the name of the bank were Lehman Sisters, we would not have this financial crisis. This small story to introduce the topic of today. I'm happy to pass the word to Clémentine, representing Ashoka today. Clémentine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Piet, for introducing this session and the Impact Monday. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to all of you again. My name is Clémentine, and I have the chance to work at Ashoka in Belgium. So before we hear Isabella, I just wanted to introduce you to Ashoka and our vision. So Ashoka is the world's first and largest network of leading social entrepreneurs with big, crazy ideas to change the world. So our mission is to identify, select and support those social entrepreneurs to scale their system change ideas and solutions. And so for more than 40 years, Ashoka has elected 3,600 social entrepreneurs all around the world, and we call them Ashoka Fellows. And Isabella Lenarduzzi is one of them. Isabella was elected in 2013. At Ashoka, we know for sure that social innovators are everywhere, working on many different topics to improve our society and our planet. At Ashoka, we strongly believe that there's no single actor that can meet today's social and environmental challenges, and that we need everyone in the society to join forces. And we really believe that there's a role for every one of us, disruptive social entrepreneurs, engaged investors, committed policymakers, inspiring media, impactful business leaders, entrepreneurs, young people. And so the webinar today is all about collaboration and giving ourselves the permission to be part of this positive change. What is the world of tomorrow that we want to dream of? And that's Isabella also started dreaming about an equal and sustainable world where with more diversity and gender balance and inclusion for everyone. And so since a very young age, she was very conscious and shocked by the inequality between men and women, and she decided to dedicate her life to change that and to make the world a better place. Isabella is really like an incredible social entrepreneur, an Ashoka fellow, a visionary, and a reference in the field of gender equality, diversity, and inclusion. With the organization that she founded, JUMP, she's been working for many years to close the gap between men and women and to really achieve sustainable corporate performance and a more equal society. She first began in Belgium and in France, and she has now successfully spread her ideas and action in Europe, influencing many big companies, CEOs, human resources managers, government institutions. And Isabella is also doing a lot of advocacy to advance this field and change the system and our mentalities, being almost every week in the media, in the news, on TV. And I just want to add that equality and inclusion are also crucial to face the current crisis that we live in, and that the battle is not over, that there's still so much to do. So I feel very proud and honored, Isabella, to welcome you today and to have you and thank you so much for accepting our invitation and to share your insight today. So I wish you all a very fruitful and inspiring conversation. The floor is yours. Thank you. Finally.
Thank you so much, Clémentine. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, great. And is it better than before? Yes. Okay.
So much better.
Super. So I will share my screen. Give me just 1 second. Do you see it full screen?
Yes.
Okay. Super. Okay, let's begin then. Very, very happy to be with you today. I'm very sad I cannot see you in 4 dimensions. It was really my big hope of the getting back to work period. It was planned as a physical meeting, but unfortunately, it's like that. That really proves that the crisis is meant to last for much longer than we initially thought, and this has, of course, a big impact on all of us, and a differentiated impact on women compared to men. And this is really the topic of our talk today. So as Clémentine and Piet said, I'm Isabella. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I founded JUMP 15 years ago. JUMP is about gender equality, about diversity, and about the inclusion in order really to change the world. Because I think that by changing this balance within the companies, by making organizations more inclusive workplaces, not only to women, but to all of us, despite our differences, then we can really change the workplaces, we can change the economy, and by changing the economy, we can make a better place, we can change the world. We at JUMP, we do many things, everything that is really useful to our mission. We do a lot of training, awareness raising, but also deep dive training in organizations. We do accompany them in order to be more inclusive workplaces, to get rid of sexism, for example, to define their most desired inclusive behaviors. We do big societal studies. We do corporate surveys. So we really do survey polls. We do data analysis, because diagnostic is so much important in order to begin with a plan in the company. Every organization is different from one another. We are also a publisher. We do publish handbooks, studies, a lot of communication tools. We have a big community of over than 100,000 people all over Europe. We have a network of diversity and inclusion responsible of more than 3,000 person around Europe, and we disseminate not only what the things that we are doing, but things that we really that we think that are worth being disseminated. This is one example. We have recently published that handbook for more inclusion. Everything that what we do is really practical. It's business oriented, either for public companies or for private companies. It doesn't change so much. And these tools are downloadable for free on our website. You can see the link here. We have also published a lot of different tools, like videos on how to answer to remarks that are homophobic, racist, or sexist. We have done 15 posters that you can download, that you can customize for your own organization and print with intersectionality. That means all the different kinds of discrimination that you can meet in the workplace, so that you can raise the awareness of your people about that. And we have a specific handbook against sexism in the workplace, but this time specifically for human resources people and leaders, because at the end of the day, they are responsible of the behaviors of their people and of the discrimination going on. So what about equality? It's not because we have, for the first time in history, in this very small part of the world, we are equal in rights, but are we equal in reality? That's really that has to be deeply discussed. What is the difference between sex and gender? Sex is your biology. Gender is a construction, is really all the norms, all the attitudes that one expects from you because you're either a woman, either a man, and you're really educated in that kind of environment that build who you are. So it's not so much about your biology that makes the difference. It's about the society that gives a different place to women than to men, and you better embed that differences and you better represent it, because the more you go with the things that are expected from you, the more you will please to the others, the less you will have problems with the others. And these are the stereotypes. A woman, she might be a sex object or she might be a mother. Usually it's very different, the view that one can have on you. Either they see you as a sex object, either they see you as a mother. And these are very, very often not compatible. It's so much of a pressure on us women. Men do suffer also from these set of norms from this patriarchal society, because they are expected really to have the world on their shoulders, to take power, to earn a lot of money, to be always strong and better, and not to demonstrate their emotions and so on. But it affects women and men differently. It affects women much more harshly than men. What is the place of women in the society? If we would have real equality, let's look about these figures. We are more than half of the population. We are almost 60% of the graduates. We are the market because we do decide about 85% of all the consumption goods decisions. So we are the market. We are not a niche, and our rate of labor of activity on the labor market is always increasing. So in the United States, for example, there are as many women than men working as in the Nordics countries. It's not, unfortunately, the case for the rest of Europe, but it's really changing very rapidly. So we always speak about the place of women in the companies, like if they had one final barrier, the so-called glass ceiling. But what is happening is not exactly that. Look at the curve of the share of men. The more we are getting higher in the hierarchy. So for the different career steps, you have more and more men. It's exactly the contrary for women. Even if in some organizations, women can begin at a bigger number at the entry level because they are almost 60% of the graduates. The more you are getting up at the career, the more we are losing women. So it's not a glass ceiling only, it's a leaky pipeline. And in order to explain that, it's a very complex set of explanations. Unfortunately, we don't have the time today to explain it, but it's very, very interesting to know much deeper what is happening in every kind of organization, even in hospitals, where you have more than 80% of women working. You see exactly the same kind of curves. Very often, even if there are 80% of the workforce that are women, at the executive committee, you have usually one woman. When you have one, it's the human resource person. So the gender gaps, despite these incredible figures, so more than half of the population, almost 60% of the graduates, there are enormous gaps still in the society and in particular in the labor market. We have not more than 5% of female CEOs of the big companies. There is an important wealth gap, not only a wage gap, but more than that, a wealth gap. We have a skill gap because almost 80% of all professions are not mixed. When we speak about balance, about mixed, it means from 40 to 60% of one gender or another. But in so many professions, you have either massively women or either massively men. It's a real pity for every kind of profession that is unbalanced. The entrepreneurship gap, if we are one third of all the freelancers, but unfortunately as head of company, as entrepreneurs, and specifically in tech companies, we are an incredible minority. Where we are much better than men, if we can say that, is that this is the average for Europe. We do spend 17 hours per week more than men to unpaid work. So it makes a huge difference at the end of the day. Unfortunately, even if more and more women are in companies, do work full time, do make a career, unfortunately, the share of unpaid work is absolutely not balanced yet. And that has a huge impact on what we will talk about. That means the impact of the sanitary crisis. If we had gender equality in the labor market, we would have a massive macroeconomic growth. Let's watch at this incredible number, 2 to 3 trillion growth from in 2 years to 1918 to 2020. That was a figure shown by McKinsey, and so it's really huge, and that was only for the EU, but also the performance of every kind of organization. So it's not only the performance of the global economy, the macroeconomic growth, but also the performance of every kind of company. Financial indicators are much better and non-financial indicators. We will see that immediately. The demographic challenge, you wouldn't expect that, but in every country where it is well considered to do both, that means for women to make a career, to stay in the labor market and to make babies, they do both. That means that they stay in the labor market and they do a lot of babies. But on the contrary, like in Germany, like in Austria, like in Italy, where it is not well considered and very complicated to do both, they tend to leave the labor market or to decrease their working time when they will make their first baby. And usually they keep at their first baby because it's too much complicated for them to handle everything. So, you know, all the populist and right-wing politicians say women need real choice to stay home and to become poor. Okay, but anyway, in order to make more babies, this is absolutely false. Innovation, because we are the market, because we decide the goods that we will buy at the end, the brands need absolutely our point of view. They need our cleverness, they need our talent, and they need our experience. And the talent, very important. The more you are an inclusive company, the more you have gender balance and diversity at every kind of level, the more you attract the best people. So the power of diversity and inclusion is to attract and retain the best talent, which is so much important nowadays, to ensure social responsibility reflecting diversity of the society, and increase innovation and team effectiveness. This is the result of Sodexo survey. They are until now the only company in the world that has made a full analysis of the difference between mixed teams, the performance of mixed teams and the performance of not balanced teams. And they have seen, as I told you before, that either for the indicators that are financial, but also non-financial indicators like safety at work, like well-being at work, like retention of employees, retention of customers, and so on, every result is much better when you have balanced teams. I like very much because we can go through so many research, because all the research do prove the same. But I like it very much. This is about the capacity of a team to find the good solution to complex situation. Exactly the time that we are going through nowadays. So we need to have the best people and the best collective intelligence in order to find the best solutions. We see that if you have only white men, you have less than 60% ability to find the good solutions. When you add women, you go immediately to 73. When you add the age diversity, it goes up to 80. And when you add ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, it's even much better. For sure, all these numbers can change from countries to countries, but it's very important to know that. So collective intelligence. This is the business case for women that maintains that companies have diversity and manage it properly. They make better decisions, they produce better products, and they retain several key business advantages over other companies. So why doesn't it happen naturally? The first thing to understand is that some of us do have privileges. This is fundamental. If you don't see differences within the society, if you don't see that women have a different place in the society than men, if you don't see that white people have a different place in the society than black people, you will never never be able to solve the discrimination. You can't solve what you can't see. So it's very important to acknowledge that when you're a man, you have a set of expected behaviors, of privileges that make your way to the top in an easiest way. I like very much that picture that was inspired by Einstein. He said, everybody's a genius, but if you judge an elephant by its ability to climbing a tree, then you will feel this is the most stupid animal. So equal treatment is not always fair. You have to pay attention to the difference of individuals, but not only of individuals, also collective differences. So this is the part where I want to introduce the sanitary crisis. Maybe Els, if you have already some remarks or some questions in the chat.
There's one specific question, and maybe you can tackle that later also, Isabella. It is more like whether you could, you have an example of a successful company that you supported to bring in more balance in their management team, and what were the positive impacts on their businesses?
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully I have some. There are not plenty. There are not plenty that do that seriously and strategically, because most of the companies do specific actions without a strategic plan and without the budget that is needed in order to be really efficient. But we are working for the moment with the European Patent Office that has more than 10,000 people all over Europe, specifically in Germany, in Austria, and in the Netherlands. And we are really, thanks to the angle of diversity and inclusion, we really were able to change, to analyze their corporate culture, that they found very surprisingly that it was very male-dominated, that it was much more for extrovert people than for introvert people, even if they work with a lot of introvert engineers. So very surprising. They have found that their culture was much more gave some privilege to certain kinds of cultural backgrounds than to others, even if they are real European organizations with every kind of nationality represented, and they acknowledge that they have a problem with the place of women in the office, because they, even if they have the best systems in place, the best processes, the culture, you know, culture eats strategy at breakfast. That means that culture is always the dominant one. If it's not well seen to go on parental leave, for example, either for women or for women, then people that want to make a career will not go on parental leave. And the people that will go on parental leave will not dare afterwards to lean in and to say, I want to make a career. I want to have more responsibility. Now I'm back. And so we were able for the first time to have down to top approach with all the staff, defining the most desired inclusive behaviors that they want to see in their companies. And people felt so much empowered, so much respected for the first time in their history in that company, that it changed already so much. Now we will do a whole communication campaign of these 10 behaviors that people did co-create, and we will do a communication campaign. We will train everybody everybody on these leadership traits, because that has to begin with the leaders. Leaders must show the way. They must embed this kind of these behaviors. So, well, we are very, very happy. It's been 18 months or so that we began to work with them, and we achieved already such incredible results. So I will continue with a wonderful quote from Simone de Beauvoir. Never forget that a political, economical, or religious crisis will be enough to cast doubt on women's rights. These rights will never be vested. You'll have to stay vigilant for your whole life. So everything which is about equality is so much in danger at every in every time. We have the impression that it will not be possible to have women back to their home because they are 60% of the graduates, but in Iran, for example, they are 80% of the graduates. So you can never know what will happen, and equality is always in danger. And we have seen that with the crisis. We have seen that the crisis didn't affect the women the same as men in the workplace, also in the forms of violence that it has taken. Let's see one picture. Yes, we can say already, I'm pretty sure that everybody can agree with that. Women saved our lives. So it's not about saving the economy. It was about our lives. Why? Because women do make 80% of the workforce of the hospitals and more than 90% of the retirement houses, which is absolutely huge. Because these professions are care jobs, and we feel that women have this natural ability to care about others. And we have seen, thanks to that crisis, that these jobs that are so fundamental for our future were not considered well enough, were not paid well enough. So this is one very big revelation. And why so? Because every time a profession becomes massively female, it loses in prestige and in salary for every kind of profession. So we do see already here that women have a different place in the society than men. When it's not well considered to have plenty of women in a profession. It's beginning. It's the same case with education. It's more and more the case with lawyers. So it's really our society is changing, and for every kind of profession invested massively by women, it decreases in prestige. So it's important to remember that. The other thing is that we thought that, okay, fantastic, for all the persons that could work on a remote way, it was really a great moment to live, because we had the impression that there was less work on the plate. For some, it was the case. Yes, for sure. We had the impression that everybody had exactly the same kind of environment that were enabling them to really thrive during the lockdown. But it was not true, because in the same time, the schools were closed. And that means that education were not anymore handled by public services, by the state, but was handled by family? Oh, not really. In most of the cases, it was handled by women. But women have changed place in the society. They are working, and a lot of them are working as much as men, and they have a lot of responsibilities too. That means that they were completely overwhelmed by these tasks that were requested by their employer, but also by having very often small children within the house, not having the same kind of logistics as men. Let me explain. We have discovered then when there was a lack of computers, of a laptop for everybody, every single member of the family, who was the person that did not enjoy the laptop because the children had to have one in order to make the lessons? It was not the man, but so the father, but the mother. The father could have, when he had that possibility, one room that was closed with the door. The women instead were working from the kitchen, from the dining room, and in a very uncomfortable way. We have when I say we, it's many organizations like OECD, for example, like the European Commission, like a lot of foundations that have made these surveys all over Europe, and everywhere it's exactly the same. Women were interrupted 5 times more doing their work than men. Why so? Because they have that weight of managing their families. They were doing the homeschool of their children. 82% of children in Germany were followed only to 100% by their mothers. When Italy opened in June the offices, so enable women to go back to their women and men to go back to their offices, it was 72% of men that went back to the offices. Where were the women? They had to take parental leave. They had to decrease their working time because the schools were not reopened, and they are still not reopened in Italy. And so this gives a lot of say of what the situation is. Another very important thing is that because we don't have the same place in the workplace than men, and because we do always tend to see much more the men and the leaders as being men, the women becoming invisible because they are working remotely, the invisibility of women might increase so much and might be a real problem for them in the future for their career. This is a very great research that shows that when you ask people who among all these pictures would they feel more confident to work for, so who they are seeing it as best leaders, the main components of competence impressions are attractiveness, confidence, and masculinity. And when we do these kind of tests in companies where we work, and we put pictures of men and female managers in the wall, on the wall, the managers tend to recognize mostly men. They don't recognize women. They can't even say who they are, what they are doing. So invisibility for women is a very difficult point, and it will not become equal with remote working. Absolutely the contrary. The unconscious bias in the workplace. Women are not getting as many hot assignments as men, so this is why visibility is so much important. They are not being asked for their opinion as often. They are not getting as much credit for their achievements. They have much more negative feedbacks than constructive or positive feedbacks. Unfortunately, I can stop on every item. Every item here really deserves a full explanation. But it's very important that to acknowledge that the place of women in the workplace is not the same as for men, and thus the new situation that we live now with remote working really affects us in a very much different way. this is why we are speaking about inclusion. Diversity is the set of the characteristic that makes us unique. It visible differences like men or men, like the color of our face and so on. Also invisible differences like cultural backgrounds, very often religion, social backgrounds and so on. And so diversity is everything about, it's really counting the differences. Inclusion is making these differences count. So it's having a sense of belonging because I feel respected, because I can come with my whole self at work. I'm respected for who I am. I have my voice heard as well as others. Another say is, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being invited to dance. I love that one. I will, unfortunately, we don't have the time to listen to that video. This is the director of the Technological University of Oslo. He said that he has acknowledged the fact that during the lockdown, there were so much less articles, scientific articles coming from female researchers because they were in very different family situation as men. So what he's saying here in the video, he says that because now in June, companies are beginning to reopen their offices, he's pledging for reopening them, first of all, to the people that are in real difficulties at home, and mostly women. And I really like that a lot, because this is a way of seeing the differences of the situation and of taking actions. So this is about my McKinsey has done two beautiful. I will send everything to Els so that you can have the link and have a deep look in it. But they have done two a very recent publication on how can a leader be much more efficient in their diversity and inclusion management, and how they can take stock of this important crisis. Here they say the crisis will endure long term. We know that now. Leaders need to take active steps to ensure continued relationship building. Changes are hitting your people in widely diverging ways. So the first thing to put in place is to have analysis. You need to be data driven. Yes, of course, to have individual conversations with your people in order to feel how they feel, to understand their needs and so on, have really deep conversation, but also to have pulse survey, anonymous pulse survey, because most of them won't probably dare to tell you everything. I really meet a lot of women that during last month did suffer so much, especially with their male leaders, that put so much pressure on their shoulders because they are in a situation where they are more than 50. So that means that they don't have any more small children inside the house. They have beautiful houses with a beautiful garden. They have a spouse that is cooking for them, that is going to the grocery for the family, and so on and so. They are in a very privileged situation, and they feel they can put more pressure on every employee, asking them to work without any kind of interruption, even during the weekend and so on, because for sure it is a crisis. For sure we need to give our best, but we are not it's not a level playing field. So it's very important to acknowledge that we have to consider our employees like we would segment our customers in order to answer their needs in a more personalized and meaningful way. We are getting to the end. This is a slide that we have prepared that in German that I really love so much, because that gives a picture of what equality is. Equality is giving everybody exactly the same tools in order for them to thrive. But because they are different, all of them cannot thrive in the same way. So inclusion is acknowledging the differences, listening to people, having these data, these survey results that enable you really to tailor the actions. We have to reframe the debate. It's not a nice to have thing, equality, diversity and inclusion. It's not only to be socially responsible. It's not meant to be led by women for women. No, it's absolutely a strategic priority. It's a business issue. It's about innovation. It's about performance. It's about return on investment. So every manager should be accountable for that. Inclusion is not a program, it's really a mindset. So for sure, you have to put a strategic program in place, but you have to adapt the culture of your organization too. And you have to adapt the culture of the person. You have to acknowledge your privileges, your biases. We all are biases. Men, women as well as men, absolutely every one of us. We have to be humble and to know that we don't know. We have to listen to the others. We have to listen to their experience, to their perspective. We have to trust the others. So we do all have a role to play in order to change the workplace, to make it a better place for everyone. The final quote is still from Mike Hitzey: "The crisis is a good time for organizations to create a more tailored responses to workplace challenges. There is an opportunity to forge a new commitment to equality and fairness." Fairness can be a word to replace inclusion. So equality and fairness that will ensure more prosperity and well-being for all. At the end of the day, I really do think that all of us want to have that inside our workforce, inside our companies, inside of our economy. And this is the way we will go out of this crisis. We will be able to reinvent another world, a world that is not based on multiple dominations, having at its core the domination of men on women, but being a world of respect, of collaboration. This is the biggest civilization shift. This is the end of the presentation, and I'm here to hear your remarks and your questions.
Thank you so much, Isabella. We received some questions in the chat box, so otherwise I'll read them through for you. First of all, Alan was asking whether the statistics that you showed, which he presumed are mostly the reality in Europe, are they comparable with those in the US?
Absolutely, completely.
Okay. That's a quickie.
You know, yeah, the situation of women is everywhere the same, not in real numbers, but relatively compared to men. So absolutely everywhere is the same.
Okay. And maybe, Piet, you can ask your question yourself.
No, my question was just your opinion on our first female prime minister, because we saw all these quotes of the different countries were led by female prime ministers who are reacting better than in general. Maybe just your thoughts on what is she doing good and what not.
It's a very difficult one. I was expecting such a question. And I don't know if you have seen that I didn't participate to that debate on the social media because I don't think that women are better intrinsically than men. I think that usually when they get at the top, they are better leaders because it's much more difficult for them to achieve the top. But it's not necessarily the case all the time. And I couldn't take part to that discussion because, you know, Sophie Wilmès is the prime minister of a very complicated country. If she's the prime minister, we have also to remember how she got there. She wasn't foreseen to have a full government. It was only at interim. There was a real lack of male candidates in order to achieve that interim position. So this is called the glass cliff. Where a bit like Theresa May during the Brexit, she had to negotiate the Brexit, which was absolutely impossible. And when the mission is impossible, or when the mission is not prestigious enough, you have much less men that are candidates to have that position. And this is where you have women very often. So Sophie Wilmès was absolutely in that position. This is absolute thing about bravoure, competence to be the prime minister. I think we were lucky enough to have her, contrary to many other men. But we had also federal health minister that is a woman, and that did not really a great job. Very surprisingly, because I couldn't expect that from her. She was even arrogant at the beginning of the crisis, and she was never arrogant like that, never before. So she was really at the beginning of a position in politics. She demonstrates a lot of feminine, what we call feminine attitude. But the more and more you maybe the more and more you are at the power level, maybe the more and more you lose these kind of attitudes. And so, yeah, I think that women have a specific place. It's much more difficult for them to manage, because they are judged much more harshly. Let's see Isabelle Cocher in Engie. Let's see Dominique Leroy in Proximus. It's very much more difficult for them. Usually they are better because it's much more complicated for them to achieve this kind of place. But it's not because we have a breast and you don't have one that we are better. I don't think so.
Thank you. There was also another question from Giorgio, and I'll let him ask you the question himself. Giorgio, the floor is yours.
Hello, Els. Hi, Isa. Can you hear me? Els,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yes. Hello. Sorry, I'm not putting the video on. I'm on a beach and I'm not decent for self work. I hope the sound is okay. Isa, for transparency, we go back a long way with Isa. One of the things we discussed, and I didn't find in your presentation, is the concept of mental load. Yes. You have shown very interesting statistics of the fact that women are interrupted 5 times more than men during this lockdown period. This is really interesting. For those listening and not being aware of that, is that even when men, and you see it really in the generation of kids, like I would say in the 2030, when couples form, you can see the men are taking their share of the work, they're doing the housework, but they tend to expect the women to do the planning. So they go, I'm gonna go buy groceries, darling, what should I buy? Or it's the woman who has to plan, you have to take the kids to school today. So she cannot concentrate on her own endeavors, be it work or be it her own professional development, because she's expected to do the planning. We discussed that. Can you comment on that? And in particular, do you have evidence that this mental workload has been heavy? Because I have seen it in many of my friends who are professional women working. The lockdown has been really, really challenging on them, even when their partner was willing to help at work. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Giorgio, for that for this question. You're completely right. I forgot to mention the mental load and also the pressure of feeling responsible for the global health, psychological health and physical health of every member of the family. We are always in charge of everything. We feel like we feel it. Very often it's not only a perception, unfortunately, because these responsibilities are not equally shared. And that means that women do suffer a lot, not only for the time they can spend to their enterprise when they are entrepreneurs. This is a tragic, by the way, this is a tragic element. Female entrepreneurs do suffer enormously from the lockdown, much more than men, because their companies are much more vulnerable. They have less capital and they earn less, and unfortunately they cannot dedicate so much time than compared to men to their companies going through that crisis. So it's very risky moment for female entrepreneurs. But for women that are employees, what we do see, even you are working at the European Commission, Giorgio, and I've spoken to a psychologist, and she was telling me that women were suffering from depression after the lockdown much more than men, and from mental problem. And we see that everywhere, absolutely everywhere, they are affected in another way than men, because, you know, Virginia Woolf has written a book called La Chambre à Soi. Somebody knows the title in English, My Own Room. Une chambre à soi, to having your own room and being quiet by your own, being able to be by your own for the time you deserve in your own room is so much important, not only to work, but also to be resilient, to have back that energy in order to face this crisis. And unfortunately, we don't have, most of the women don't have that quiet and private room. So thank you for sharing that, Giorgio.
Thank you. And there's one last question from Amélie, because we need to watch our time. Amélie, I'll let you ask the question yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. It was really very informative and very good, very inspiring also. If I haven't misunderstood, at a certain point you mentioned that women, I don't remember where it was, but should be prioritized about coming back to work after COVID. And I work for a company where actually it's not exactly like that. Or rather, to be fair, it's people with children are authorized to stay home and not come back. And I imagine that without any actions, that would mean women would stay home with the children and men would go back. So I was wondering whether you had more insight on this, if you could elaborate a little bit more of what could be done to make sure that women would come back in priority so that somebody else would take care of the children, i.e. their partner. Thank you.
Exactly. I think that companies have a responsibility in pointing out the fact that parents are not living the same situation as parents that have very big children or people that don't have children. By only saying, communicating, if your personal situation requires from you that you have your own private office to enable you to work in a silent environment, please let us know, and we will make sure that that you will have the priority without putting necessarily the finger on being a mother or a father. Only by saying that, you will see that many more women will come out and say, please, can I come back at least 2 days a week? And then when they will have that possibility, it will be much easier for them to negotiate with their spouse or with the grandparents or with the or to pay for the babysitter, because now we are in a very different situation that from the lockdown we can get help in order to have people staying at home or elsewhere with our children. So we are in a different situations, but we need to go back to the office for some of us. I repeat, it's not the same for every kind of women. It depends on our own situation, but we need to acknowledge that we are in different situations and that we can listen to different needs and answer to these different needs.
Thank you, Isabella. First of all, I want to thank you once more. We were very privileged to have you with us today, and thank you for sharing all your insights. I'm happy to share them with the participants and for those who couldn't join due to the last-minute change of platform. So I will share the recorded version of this session.
Can I add something else that I forgot to mention? So I said that we have to measure. It needs to be data-driven. We need to do surveys. We need to have deep conversation face. They do make surveys, but they never make an analysis on gender. So they don't measure the situation of women compared to men. This is a scandal. And when I spoke to the Minister of the Economy and of Entrepreneurship, Denis Ducarme, I was on the TV show, and I told him that a female entrepreneur is not in the same condition as a man entrepreneur, and I explained why. He looked at me like that. He never thought about it. And so it was good enough the following week to make a meeting with me and with other people fighting for better equality and for female entrepreneurs especially, in order to ask us what's the situation and what can I do. And what's the crazy thing is that, you know, you have the gender mainstreaming, gender budgeting. This is in the law. So that means that everywhere, when you have a recovery plan, you should analyze the impact on women compared on men. And if it's not equal, if it damages more one gender on the other, you have to make something out of it. It's in our law, embedded in our law. And the recovery plan at the federal level or the Brussels level that I had the opportunity to look at in a very informal way, when it was about gender mainstreaming and the test of equality, they said not applicable. What? Not applicable? Come on. This is completely crazy. So if you don't measure people, these people do not count. If you don't measure women, women don't count. And if you don't measure things, you won't be able to solve the problem. This is why in Germany, they are saying that because of the sanitary crisis and the economic crisis that is only beginning, we are doing a back step of more than 30 years in terms of gender equality. 30 years, and these are Germans that do say that. So we have to pay attention.
Thank you. And an important one to take with us and that to embed it in everything we do or within an organization. Thank you so much, everyone, for dialing in. Apologies for the last-minute issues, but we made it, and hope we see you later this week in one of our other sessions. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, no.
Are you still there?
Yes.
I'm trying. I feel like people leaving now, but yeah.
Yeah, everyone left. The three women are staying in the call.
Yes.
Thank you so
Well
much,
done.
Isabella. I think in the end, it worked out well. We had 30 people joining. I know we had 64 participants registered, but I think we lost some of them.